Welcome to the show. My name is Charlton with Big C. This is Charlton and Big C Sports, coming to you worldwide on the Big C Sports Network, on the #1 network in the United States of America. And Big C Sports has been voted the #1 sports show in the universe, according to Big C. And them good old boys down south, I want to say, begin bonitos to all of our listeners in Latin America, also across the pond, and London, England, as well as Paris, France. Of course, you good old boys in Canada, we love you in Africa, the Big C tribe. But there's no one we love more than the good old boys down south in the land of the free and the home of the brave on a beautiful August the 14th, 2019, Ground of Deportes. Big C, how's it going for you good old boys down south?
Charlton, it's wonderful for us down south, but it's bad for the Baltimore Orioles up in the Northeast. They're happy to have their series over with the New York Yankees for the season, Charlton. They dropped 16 consecutive games to the Bronx Bombers and gave up a total of 61 home runs during that stretch.
Wow, I kind of thought I was watching a basketball score when you look at what the Yankees are doing to a lot of people. It just shows that when you can hit the ball, no matter how good pitching is, it really makes a difference for every team. A lot going on in the sports universe, whether Tiger Woods is going to play or not. I just want to see people succeed. It's always great when that happens. I also know there's a lot of things going on in the world of football, really getting that feel of being, counting down to kickoff. It reminds me of so many things that I felt when I was a young boy too, Big C. I know a lot of people love football season, and there's just something about the I can't wait until I get Big C's tailgate. I know you did a lot of Big C tailgate last year. Can't wait to hear more of that. I want to say today's show is sponsored by your Northern California Cadillac dealers, home of the all-new Cadillac Escalade, the standard of the world. And when you go by and test drive yours, tell them Charlton and Big C sent you. Big C, I love so much that summer is here. A lot of kids are going back to school in the next couple of days. I know there's a freedom that comes. I was out doing some jogging today, and I ran across an old military guy, and I said, "Man, you're the reason I started running about 6 years ago." And he said, "Really?" Well, I don't know if it's a good thing. He had a knee brace. He said he's had knee surgery, all kind of things wrong with him. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, I can identify with having a knee brace on.
Yep.
I mean, this is what happens when we get older, and we've had a lot of knee injuries when we were younger, thought we were all great athletes, but, Father Time catches up with us, and we need a little bit of apparatuses on our body from time to time to support it.
Yeah, I would say I hope that's not our premonition of the future, but he's a good-looking guy. He's about in his 60s, and he still looks like he's fit. He swims a lot, too, as well as working out. So I just want to pay homage to it. And he's also a military veteran, so I love making that known. And I do want to say, because of respect to our military, I want to say also we have this hotline number that's out there for people who've been going through some things, Big C. And it doesn't matter who you are. If you're military, of course, or if you're just a civilian, there's a national hotline number. It's 800-273-8255. That's 800-273-8255. So if you're going through some issues, just pick up the phone and call somebody. You can get some help. A lot of high school kids, teenagers, boys and girls, I didn't know so much about this until I started hanging around AAU. A lot of kids get cyberbullied, Big C, and so they can also reach out and get help. You can text 838-255. That's 838-255. Big C, when you see veterans, that number rings a bell to me more. I'm so appreciative that you brought it up, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, I mean, there's so many people in this great country that's in need of help, and just like myself when I was young and growing up, people are shy and introverted, even as adults.
Yeah.
They don't always want society to know what's going on in their lives, so they try to keep it under wraps. And a lot of times, suppression of mental needs, Charlton, and help really hurts people down the road. So to have this number that you can reach out to with anonymity, and people don't know who you are,
That's
and
right.
you can just talk, and be open about the struggles that you may be going through, or somebody that you know may be going through. This is a lifesaver, Charlton, when you call this National Suicide Hotline.
Yep.
Because we have over 20 veterans a day, Charlton, committing suicide in this country.
Wow.
Because they feel that there's no help for them, there's no place to turn. So to have this number that's there, that's readily available for everybody, and especially veterans.
Yeah.
And veterans need help every day. We see so many displaced veterans in this country, Charlton. They put their lives on the line for this country.
Yeah.
And this country has not done the same for them.
Well, I believe in what we do, Big C. And in fact, this morning I heard another sports show, very popular show. They were talking about sports and politics. Also, Anthony Scaramucci, he's doing his I guess he's doing a book signing coming up pretty soon, Big C, because he has a lot to say about POTUS. If Scaramucci's a grown man, and you just realize that POTUS is a bigot once he fires you, that kind of lacks a little bit of credibility, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, you know what a guy is going in. And
Yep.
It's just like as we look at the political landscape in the world, we got, Mitch Russian McConnell, who won't pass any bill on the Senate floor, Charlton, as far as for gun checks and safety for kids. I mean, you think about Stoneman Douglas that happened a year ago, Charlton.
Yeah.
And, at that time, the president said we were going to have new gun legislation and background checks. It's amazing how quickly that Congress forgot about that.
Yeah.
No one remembers Stoneman Douglas, Charlton, and it's been a year ago. We had shootings in El Paso and Dayton just over a week ago, Charlton. It's amazing how quickly the country has deflected away from that and start talking about other things. Those people don't matter in the political minds of America, Charlton. They just, casualties, they're collateral damage.
Yeah. It's
and
really
our society owes more of sincerity to those people who have lost their lives to senseless gun violence in America. Since 1980, Charlton, over 680,000 Americans have lost their life to gun violence in America. 680,000 Americans have died from guns on domestic territory, Charlton, on the U.S.
Yeah.
More than in the World War II, Vietnam, Korea, World War I, Charlton, even the Civil War, all combined.
Wow.
We've had more Americans lost in America to gun violence than all the wars we fought around the world. Since 1980.
That's amazing information, and I know we're going to do a lot of talking today about the presence of African Americans in this country, and primarily sports and political. But I love the fact that I have so many intelligent friends. I want to just congratulate a friend of mine by the name Rashid Salam, runs a program called Be a Champion Foundation out of the St. Louis area, and we were talking today about what do we need as people, because we can't wait for mainstream. I hate waiting for somebody, but there's a book called The Miseducation of the Negro, and it's by Carter G. Woodson. And when you study who he was an American historian, author and journalist, and the founder of the Association for the Study of African Americans. And we were just talking about how so many young African American boys this time of year are getting ready for double days, whether it's football, we know they do it in basketball, they do it in a lot of things. But there's a study about African Americans that needs to be addressed for our young kids. I know you brought up the point yesterday about people who are trying to find out how we can decide how to make America great again. Well, in all of that, sometimes we get so hoodwinked and sidetracked by sports. It was brought to my attention today, and is little known, but there's 90,000 black girls missing in the United States of America. We give out that hotline number, and it's about calling if you need help. And I know if these girls are white, it would be all over the news, but 90,000 young black girls missing in the land of the free and the home of the brave. We talk about calling 800-273-8255 or texting 838-255. And without Big C Sports, you wouldn't hear that, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, we get so caught up in sports and politics in America is that we forget about the layman person. I know years ago, Charlton, they had kids missing on milk cartons. That was a big thing. You'd put two pictures on the back of a milk container. That's when they used cardboard containers. Now they've gone to plastic, and they went away from that, Charlton. Do you recognize this child? This child has been missing for years.
Yeah.
I mean, this has been a problem in American society forever. But because you have a large number of African-American children missing, they don't consider that mainstream, Charlton. It's a secondary entity in our society.
Yeah.
But all children are valuable, Charlton. All children. And everything should be done to protect those lives. We see what the current administration feels towards children of color, Charlton. They want to lock them in cages.
Yeah.
So I'm not, awed that the administration doesn't put out anything about these missing African-American children.
Well, Big C Sports will, and I hope that for the parents who are going through that, I remember one time shopping in a mall when my daughter was probably about 3 years old, and kids can do this, and it just drops your heart. She hid between, those clothing racks that you can go and you can try on different sizes, and it's a circle. It's about maybe a 10-foot circle, but it's a clothing rack, and she hid under there, and she was missing for about a good 10, 15 seconds. Big C, I panicked. I lost my mind. And then she came out of it. Now, for these 90,000 African-American girls that are missing, we hear about border crossing. We hear about school shootings. We hear about Epstein, supposedly, quote-unquote, ending his own life. But of 90,000 young black girls missing, and it's an untold story in the United States of America, and I hope that people keep looking, don't give up hope. And Carter G. Woodson, I encourage every young black child to just pick up the book and read it. It's called Miseducation of the Negro, because we're so focused on who can score touchdowns and hit home runs and dunk a basketball, and who's going to sign a $30 million, $40 million contract. 90,000 of anything missing is a tragedy, and those are American-born girls. I do want to say we're going to touch on some of the greatest black athletes of all time, and everybody has their own opinion. It's not to leave out white American athletes or any other ethnic group, but it's a pretty sad dog that won't wag his own tail. But this 90,000 girls missing, and they're black, if you're a father or a mother, if that was your child, how much happier would you be that you never heard about it? You would be devastated. With Big C Sports, we're never just going to be a Sick and Fit sports show. I want to make sure that's on the top of the mind. Big C, I want to say, in my opinion, one of the top most iconic athletes would be Jesse Owens. And I want to get your thoughts, because we talk about Make America Great Again. He also went up against that same type of garbage when Hitler was hanging around. And you understand what I mean. He dispelled that myth of the Aryan nation. Give me your thoughts on what Jesse Owens meant to the universe. Big C, your thoughts.
Well, Charlton, when you talk about some of the greatest African-American athletes in American history, I mean, you can only put so many on the list. But you could take that list into the hundreds, because there's so many great athletes. And you got to find a defining line where you have to limit the numbers that you can put on a list.
Yeah.
But when you talk about Jesse Owens and the time that Jesse Owens had to compete, back during Jim Crow in the 30s, Jesse Owens could not be recognized as an American citizen, Charlton. He had to fight vitriol in America, as well as going over to the 36 Olympics in Berlin.
Yeah.
And at the time when Jesse Owens was competing as an athlete, we see Olympic events, Charlton, where athletes run every couple days. Jesse Owens had to do all these things in one day.
Yeah.
In the Big Ten track and field championships that year, Charlton, prior to going to the Olympics, Jesse Owens had to compete in 4 events in 45 minutes and won them all. 4 events in 45 minutes. He competed in those same 4 events and won 4 gold medals in the Olympics over a 2-day span back in 1936, debuting the great Aryan nation myth that Hitler was trying to build, that black athletes were inferior to white athletes, Charlton, and he dominated the world, made him probably the greatest athlete of all time.
Well, I love the fact that we can talk about that and pay homage to it, because even with doing the Big C Sports Show, there are platforms that would say, no, we don't want to really go there. We just want to talk about who scored more points and who won the game. But when I think about what Jesse Owens went through, what society has never really addressed is the trauma that has happened in African Americans, where there's mental, the problems that we've had with that, being able to fit in socially, educational wise, employment, housing, banking. And when you think about guys like Jesse Owens, it's so juxtaposed to saying a guy won't play today because he won't get $40 million, $34 million not enough. And look at what the African American athlete back in the day, they were a different breed of mentality. They had to fight harder just to live, let alone win a game. Big C, number 2.
You think about Jesse Owens, when he came back to the U.S. after winning 4 gold medals, he was not celebrated with a ticker tape parade, Charlton.
No.
The only job that he could get when he came back to the U.S. was as a janitor. This was the most decorated athlete from the 1936 Berlin Olympics, an American. And the only job that he could get was working as a janitor in a high school, Charlton.
Yeah, and that's so true. And that's why we talk about even and the book with Carter G. Woodson, The Miseducation of the Negro. These are a lot of strong African American men. They didn't make the $200 million contract, and they said nothing. That's, again, I'm not just talking. We're doing it right now. Not everybody likes what we do. All we ask you to do is Google it. We're not going to be here forever. But I would be ashamed if I was a person that, through the help of God or the universe, had access to a microphone, and I did not pay homage to guys like Carter G. Woodson. And we talked about Frederick Douglass yesterday. And there's so many other men who they couldn't care less about making $100 million. They just wanted to live. And I'm thinking, there's another book by William Shockley. It's called Future Shock. A lot of our kids need to read that. We could learn more about Jesse Owens' mentality than some of the guys that want to go around and lose $500,000 of whatever in a cab in San Francisco. Number 2, Jack Johnson. Here's another guy. Unlike you and I, Big C, I know we face discrimination, but we push through it. Just like lifting weights, it makes you stronger if you don't lose your focus. But Jack Johnson, he also had to overcome a lot. He wasn't just in the ring fighting. Big C, your thoughts?
Jack Johnson lived his life through the eyes of discrimination in America and around the world, Charlton. He was hated for beating up on white men. He was a world champion for 8 years, Charlton, the first African-American heavyweight world champion of the world. Lived in a time of turmoil, and everyone hated him. The U.S. government came after him. He had to flee the U.S. and live in France, Charlton, because the U.S. government wanted him for a Mann Act, just for being married, an interracial marriage. And so they wanted to put him in prison for that because he was beating up white people. But in the time that he fought, where they were hanging black people for looking at white people, he was beating them up for a living. And so when you think about he and Jesse Owens, and you think about the forefront of the black African-American athletic movement, Charlton, those two men set the table for everybody.
Yeah, they really did. And that's why people got to read the book, William F. Shockley. It's called Future Shock. It was written back in the 70s. There's just so much that we got to do, and even juxtaposed to what I see today. And I told you, it makes me feel like I want to throw up sometimes when I'm watching programs, and they're just bragging about, and they're arguing about who is the biggest, strongest, and fastest black man on what team. And they don't give you anything about history. Well, God said, quit complaining and be a part of the solution, so we will be. Simone Biles, I would say number 3. And again, it's not any particular order, but I just want to bring to the sporting universe people who've overcome. Even as a great gymnast, you know that U.S. Olympic teams, those girls had to overcome some things that were illegal, but they had to keep their focus to become the greatest. Big C, your thoughts?
When you think about Simone Biles, Charles, not only is she probably the greatest female gymnast of all time, she was adopted as a baby. Her and her sister. So she had a hard path to get to where she's going just from birth, Charlton. But she was taken in by a loving family, Charlton. This family gave her all the things that she needed to nourish and flourish in life, Charlton. And she's dominated the world. She's had 6 consecutive overall world championships in female tennis.
In gymnastics. And she's amazing. And just thinking about how dominant she is as a human being. And there's something, if we could just, as a group of people, all Americans, but I'm speaking to African Americans because we're really the only ethnic group that's been punished for being great. And that's even as an athlete. And I just know that if we don't talk about it, they probably don't hear about it. So it's important. Everybody wants to get to the next level. You got to figure out what to do to get to the next level. I believe a part of that's spiritual, part of that's education. But there's intellect versus instinct. And too many of our young boys are trained to be instinctual instead of intellectual. That's why on Big C Sports, we want to have people to read. Just Google it. Doesn't matter what color you are, but Google it. I would say another person on the list. Number 4, Serena Williams. Here's a woman that has been so dominant. And you look at her sister Venus as well, and how they were raised in Southern California, South Central area, by their father, a black man, who came under such ridicule because he wanted to go against the mainstream. But by doing that, his daughters became the best in the universe. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Serena Williams has been such a modern inspiration for so many young African-American female athletes, Charlton. She's dominated the world stage. She's done it with class and character, and she's been accepted in mainstream. But she has set the table for the modern young female athlete.
She has, and I know that through talking about their greatness, and people, there are young people right now that want to be great. You want to be something. but sometimes you just don't know where to go. When I grew up, Big C, they called it, I was so fortunate that I had access to my parents and my grandparents and even great-grandparents. I was born at that time before that next generation came up. So no matter what I've dealt with in life, I always had a strong spiritual foundation and an anchor that made me realize I could do anything. Just have faith in God and work harder than everybody else. Another player that I can't say is much different than that, and I don't know him personally. I wish he could do more socially. Michael Jordan. I still don't think he's the greatest basketball player of all time, but he created a sea change with branding of Nike and one of the biggest marketing pushes to get African Americans to help make him a multi-millionaire. But I want to get your thoughts as an athlete, what he's done. Big C, your thoughts.
Well, as an athlete, Michael Jordan has ascended to all great heights, Charlton. When you think about his 6 NBA titles, his 1 collegiate title at North Carolina, he became a marketing brand. Michael Jordan changed the way that black athletes did business, Charlton.
Yeah.
He taught black athletes that you are valuable outside the playing arena.
Yeah.
And that you have to go out and capitalize on all marketing areas. That's what Michael Jordan has done, which has made him one of the greatest athletes and spokespersons for black athletes.
And I love what you're saying. Then people talk about now, the new generation. Are you what is a corporation? A corporation is a person, just like a trust is a person. And the people that put things in writing will do more for themselves and the generations they leave behind long after they're gone. And I would love to see Michael Jordan. And again, I'm not knocking him. I'm just saying I'm doing what I would like to see more conscientious African American men do. You can speak it into existence. You can pull in, I believe, in 6 degrees of separation. There are people who will show up when your teacher's ready. When you're ready, the teacher will come. That business that he's created, Big C, that's a model that a lot of people can do. You've done it yourself. And I want to go to another player that's probably known all over the universe as the greatest, Muhammad Ali. We know as a social activist. We talked about Carter G. Woodson. We talked about so many people who've done more than just play the sport. Give me your thoughts on why Muhammad Ali would be on that list, if you agree. Your thoughts.
Muhammad Ali created consciousness in America, in all cultures, African American culture, even in white culture. He made people step back and look at themselves for what their self-worth was. Muhammad Ali is known as the greatest because he had a conscientious mind to make people think outside the box.
Yeah, and I still remember going from Cassius Clay to Muhammad Ali. There was a picture, and I know I might miss some of the names, but I know that Kareem Abdul-Jabbar was there. I believe Jim Brown was there. I believe Jesse Jackson was there. I mean, there was. I think also Malcolm X was in that picture. It was about young men at that time who didn't have all the answers for everything, but they did not hold back on what they did know. And to this day, they have already created a legacy that people will never forget about. Another one of the great ambassadors for African American history in sports and business, I would say the great Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Lou Alcindor. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, here's a young man that was prescient as a young man. He had a social conscience, Charlton. He had a political conscience. And he wrapped himself around the best people for his mind's sake, Charlton. We all know that he created a shot that nobody could duplicate or nobody could stop. He was the NBA's all-time leading scorer, Charlton, 6-time champion as a player. This man did it all in the arena of basketball, and he's also done it all as a social activist.
Yeah, he's just an amazing, and he's still around a lot of the sporting events, especially with the Lakers. Really, I'm just grateful that I was born in this time. Bill Russell, I would say, and again, it's not about who's number one on the list and who's, last on the list, but just some people in the sports universe to bring your mind to what they've done consciously as well as athletically. There was a gentleman on a sports program today, head coach of the San Antonio Spurs, Popovich, and he was saying some things about Colin Kaepernick, and I appreciate when white men are prescient enough to just speak truth, irrespective of what color, because oftentimes when black men speak like us, they get ridiculed. It's amazing, but if we don't stand up for ourselves, then nobody will. Give me your thoughts on the great Sugar Ray Robinson, and even with Bill Russell, to tie those two together, Big C. Sugar Ray Robinson, Bill Russell, and one of the top 50, Big C, your thoughts?
Well, when you think about Bill Russell, the most decorated basketball player of all time, Sugar Ray Robinson, so many modern boxers modeled and modeled their skills after his skill set. Sugar Ray Leonard, Muhammad Ali, Larry Holmes, they all looked at him as a model, Sugar Ray Robinson, to fashion their boxing career after him. Even Floyd Mayweather mimics him in many occasions.
Yeah, and I just see, when I hear about guys like that, I think about conversations I've had with my father. There's a song by the late Luther Vandross, and we talked about Carter G. Woodson. We talked about so many people that have been significant in life, so we still think about them, and even when they're gone. But there's a song, people can Google it. It's called "Dance with My Father," and it's a song as a man that made me cry, because for anyone who's ever lost a father, appreciate them while they're here. And that song is not just written for a girl. It can be written for anybody. But think about that if you've ever had a great relationship with your dad. Dance with My Father, Luther Vandross. Google it. Big C. Emmitt Smith, another young man that came out of South Florida, great high school, All-American player. I remember when he went on to the University of Florida, he was not the fastest guy in the world, but he had a running style that ran north and south. You know what that means as a defensive player. And just give me your thoughts on Emmitt Smith. He's also a big-time real estate guy, Big C. Your thoughts?
Emmitt Smith's the NFL's all-time leading rushing champion, Charlton, and also three-time Super Bowl winning running back with the Dallas Cowboys. Played on one of the greatest offenses ever in the NFL, Charlton. They were a dominant team. He was a dominant, productive running back and led them to 3 championships.
Amazing athlete and still doing great things, after his football days were over. There's a guy that's probably as big as a redwood tree. And I'm not just saying that as a person, but as a visionary. This is a man, and I believe I was talking to a gentleman that's an ESPN reporter at an NBA basketball game, and I won't name drop, but he was telling me that Shaquille O'Neal, actually as a businessman, he endorsed a shoe that you could buy at Walmart. I think it was for $14. Juxtapose that to Michael Jordan for shoes that go as high as $1,000. And he made millions off of a shoe that he endorsed for $14 as a multi-millionaire. His vision is very vast, Big C. Your thoughts?
Shaq has become a huge endorser since he's left the game of basketball, Charlton. But on the court, his skills were unparalleled. When he became a dominant player with the Lakers, Charlton, he went on to win 3 titles with the Lakers, moved on to the Miami Heat, won his 4th NBA title. But Shaq, the biggest man that I've ever met, stature-wise, that was in shape. He's just a dominant presence on the basketball court, Charlton. He changed the way that the NBA looked at the game on an inside basis.
Yeah, and I appreciate, and again, back to Carter G. Woodson, the miseducation of the Negro. It's about spirituality and being educated and knowing where we're going. And when I can say that we live among men who are also pressing enough to be that, and they're not just a label, they're not just someone who can score a basketball or a touchdown, and I appreciate that Shaq will probably make more money outside of his basketball playing days than he did while he was playing. Another great athlete and activist, and I would say corporation, Jerry Rice. People know him as the leading touchdown catcher in the NFL. But he continues to work hard at everything he does. He endorses TV commercials, car loans, and everything. The man keeps working hard, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, as a football player, Charlton, he was a dominant force on the field, playing with the San Francisco 49ers and ending up across the bay with the Oakland Raiders, Charlton, and continuing a great Hall of Fame career. But he set the benchmark for all wide receivers in the NFL.
Yeah, he really has, and I'm proud of the fact. I remember when I was a younger kid, I took my nephews up to a 49er training camp. They used to work out up at Sierra College in Rockland, just north of Sacramento. And I remember when they were starting to win Super Bowls and took them there, and he signed an autograph for my nephew on his shirt, and my sister watched it. We still laugh about that to this day. Hank Aaron, Hammer and Hank, I would put him 13 on the list. And again, it's not about what order, but I want to get your thoughts on Hank Aaron. These young African-American men, they dominated just out of Jim Crow, Big C. Your thoughts?
Hank Aaron played his entire career with the Braves organization, Charlton. Hammer and Hank broke Babe Ruth's home run record back in the mid-'70s. amid death threats, Charlton, because they didn't want him to break this hollow record that allegedly belonged to a white man, Charlton, even though Babe Ruth had not hit the most home runs in pro baseball history at that time.
Yeah.
But Hank Aaron lived through it all, through Jim Crow, through segregation, and was the most dominant force at the bat in his major league career.
Well, I just appreciate the fact that there's so much to get through. I want to come up on what's called the Big C pause, but sometimes, you ever have a steak, Big C? I've been eating so much salad, I want a steak. And I want it medium. I don't want it well done. I don't want it rare. I want it medium. But I want a steak. But I'm going to take this Big C pause. And after we take the Big C pause, I'm going to come back and finish that list. And I hope that you'll come back and join it with us. And we really appreciate your time. All right, we are back from what's called the Big C pause. And I just appreciate everything that's happening with the Big C Sports Network. You can follow Big C Sports 24 hours a day, 7 days a week on the #1 podcast network in the universe on iHeartRadio Podcast. You can follow Big C Sports on Apple Podcast. You can follow Big C Sports on Google Podcast. If you have YouTube, you can follow Big C Sports on YouTube. You can follow Big C Sports on Spreaker. If you have a TV set in your house, and most people do, you can follow Big C Sports on Xfinity Comcast. But what I really love is the app called Alexa. If you say, Alexa, play Big C Sports Podcast, you'll hear from our sponsors. You'll hear Welcome to the Show. I'll introduce Big C as the Mystic, and he'll do his thing. And I really appreciate our sponsors for their growth and support. Again, 90,000 African-American girls missing in the United States of America. You can Google that, too. It's out there. It's very, very well known, but you got to dig deep for it. If there were 90,000 white girls missing, it would be major news every single night, but it's not. Google that. Big C. I want to look at another player that has been a social activist, like Coach Popovich talked about today. The great Wilt Chamberlain. I know as one of the most dominating athletes. He also had a life outside of sports. And give me your thoughts to what he means to the sports universe. Big C, your thoughts.
Wilt was a very polarizing figure at the time when he came around. You think about a 7'1" black man in the 50s dominating the court of basketball, Charlton.
Yep.
He moved on to the NBA and had an unparalleled career. At the time that he retired, he was all-time leader in scoring, rebounding, and block shots, and ranked in the top 5 in assists, Charlton. He's still today the only NBA player to ever score 100 points in one game.
That's amazing. And I know he's gotten into some acting also. There's just so much that men have done, and they did it. They were bold. They were bold like Simba, like in The Lion King. Everybody believes that you got to start someplace. If you're young enough and fortunate enough to have some parents that will believe in you, no matter what you go through, people are going to love you when you're up. When they think you're down, they show their real colors. But they'll come back around. And I appreciate all the African-American men, like Carter G. Woodson said. They pressed through, Big C. Another great athlete, Jackie Joyner-Kersee. Everybody knows that for women, they've had it tough too. But these fighters, they kept fighting. We've done it athletically. We've done it in the classroom. We've done it in the workforce. And oftentimes to the dismay of many people who didn't want to succeed. But let me ask you your thoughts on the great Jackie Joyner-Kersee, Big C, your thoughts.
Charlton, she's probably the greatest female track and field athlete that we've ever had in America. She's competed in multiple Olympics, Charlton, multiple gold medal winner, Charlton. She has dominated that circuit in multiple layers in the 100, 110 hurdles,
yep,
the 200, Charlton, the 400. Jackie Joyner-Kersee was an inspiration long before Serena Williams was.
Yeah, and just amazing. A lot of these young people, they didn't come out of Beverly Hills where they had no social pressures, where they had full bellies, where their parents were not harassed, where they were not dealing with some issues. They had to stay focused, Big C. Another person that was very focused, Venus Williams. She didn't have to look too far to see what excellence was. She often saw it in her sister and her father. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Venus Williams was Serena before Serena. Venus was the older of the two siblings, Charlton, and she came onto the world stage and dominated, and she set the table that made it easier for her sister Serena. They're both top flight competitors still today on the women's tennis circuit.
Yeah, and I'm just appreciative when you ever have anyone that has the same bloodline and they dominate against the odds. I remember hearing some knuckleheads say they were trying to compare Serena Williams and Venus Williams to some mainstream tennis players, and they were talking about the skin color because mainstream has always pushed to the forefront Caucasians. We know that. Hitler was all about that in the Aryan movement, and we saw what Jesse Owens did to that. But it's happened not just in the classroom, it happens in movies, it happens in if you're trying to get a loan for a home or a job. We know it's there. But if you're focused, you're going to get what you want anyway. A good friend of mine said, and my mother always tells me, whatever God means you to have is not going to miss you. Just keep doing your part. I want to bring up a guy that may be the fastest runner in the universe, and Usain Bolt. I don't know if you've ever run a 9.3 Big C, but he has, and maybe even faster. I think some guys can run so fast they run out of their shoes, Big C. Your thoughts on Usain Bolt?
You talk about the greatest sprinter in the history of the world, and that's Usain Bolt. Over the last 3 Olympics, Charlton, he has dominated. He has won the 100-meter, Charlton. He's won the 4x100 relay. He's won the 200-meter, Charlton. Usain Bolt is an individual unlike any other that we've ever seen on the sprint circuit worldwide.
Yeah, amazing. I remember at the 2000 U.S. track and field events, and there was Carl Lewis in the press box. A lot of other people, Tom Hammond doing the play-by-play of it, and just seeing so many great athletes. In fact, Edwin Moses showed up, and just looking at how tall and lanky he was. And then who would know that about 20 years later, an athlete would come along that would just set records, Big C, and the great Usain Bolt. Joe Louis, here's a guy that I heard my father talk about. And again, I encourage anyone out there, especially men, Google Luther Vandross and listen to the song Dance With My Father. Just do it if you have a heart. It takes 5 minutes, but get some napkins when you do it. Big C, Joe Louis, what he meant to the African-American people. Your thoughts?
The Brown Bomber, Charlton, was at that time the greatest African-American athlete around. He was in that same era where you had the great Jackie Robinson. But Joe Louis carried the hopes of African-Americans throughout the United States, Charlton. He was going out there, and he was representing a culture. Every time he fought an opponent for 8 years holding the heavyweight title, Charlton, he represented Black America.
Yeah.
And there was no greater prize to Black America than Joe Louis.
Big C, your thoughts on Wilma Rudolph. And I want to get your thoughts on Michael Johnson after we talk about Wilma Rudolph. Your thoughts?
You think about Wilma Rudolph, Charlton. This was a young girl that was born with polio.
Yeah.
And she overcame that, Charlton. She went on to be an Olympic gold medalist in the sprint. Wilma Rudolph had every adversity in life that you could think about. She grew up in a segregated America. She had polio, but she had parents that believed in her and kept working with her. They got her the best of physical therapy that they could. She went on to become a world and Olympic champion, Charlton.
Amazing. And I talked about the U.S. Olympic trials back in 2000, and none other than the great Michael Johnson was there, the man that could run. I think he wore the gold shoes. Give me your thoughts. He's no Usain Bolt, but he's pretty close to him, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, at the time when Michael Johnson was running, he was the most dominant sprinter in the world, Charlton. He won the 200 and the 400 in the 96 Olympics down in Atlanta. That Atlanta Olympics where the great Muhammad Ali lit the torch to Calder there at the Olympic Stadium. And what a fitting place to win 2 gold medals with Muhammad Ali being present.
That's amazing. The speed of athletes. And again, remember Jesse Owens? He was hated. But good old boy Michael Johnson, he was able to make millions off of endorsements. But I'll never forget the fact that Jesse Owens made a lot of that possible. I want to jump into number 21, Barry Sanders. And then I want to throw in also Ernie Banks, Big C. Those 2 great athletes, your thoughts on them?
Well, Barry Sanders is somebody every defensive player hated, Charlton. You know, he was an embarrassment waiting to happen if you played defense. He'd think you're missing a phone booth. And he would have been the NFL's all-time leading rusher, Charlton, if he didn't hasten an early retirement from the game. But he did it for personal reasons, and you respect Barry for that. Just a phenomenal athlete.
I want to get your thoughts on another great athlete. You think about Ernie Banks, and then I want to also throw in Arthur Ashe, Big C. Your thoughts?
Ernie Banks was Mr. Cub. He was what Chicago laid their hearts on, Charlton. He was a perennial all-star at third base for the Cubs, a Hall of Famer, hit over 500 home runs in his career, Charlton. just a great ambassador for African Americans in Major League Baseball.
Yeah, definitely has a name that will go down in history. Men that have left a legacy. Give me your thoughts on the great Arthur Ashe. For people that love to play the game of tennis, I played tennis when I was a young boy. Never really caught the swing of it. I loved basketball and baseball and football more. But give me your thoughts on the great Arthur Ashe, what he meant to people all over the world, and especially men of color. Big, so your thoughts.
Well, Arthur Ashe was the foundation for African-American tennis in America. He learned from Althea Gibson, who was a great female African-American tennis player.
Yeah.
But Arthur Ashe was able to grab the world stage because he played at a time when television was picking up the sports. And he was rivals with some of the great white tennis players of that time, Charlton. He became a spokesperson for AIDS. He got it doing a blood transfusion, Charlton. And he spent the rest of his living days advocating for those who were victims. And he was a victim, Charlton, of a malpractice medical procedure.
And everybody knows you can live longer now. Just get treated. Everybody get your medication and find out what you got to do. I want to bring up another athlete, the Southern guy, who has, again, I've heard this thing called country strong. I don't know what that means, but I'm pretty sure that Bo Jackson is country strong. But I'm going to go with Bo Jackson. Give me your thoughts on him being country strong, Big. So your thoughts.
Well, you know, everybody knows that Bo was a tremendous athlete. When you think about all sports, Bo could play all sports.
Yeah.
He was fast. He was powerful, Charlton. And he was cocky because he knew he was good. His career was cut short with a leg injury in a game against Cincinnati when he was playing with the Raiders. But Bo was a phenomenal baseball player where he was an all-star. He was an all-pro football player, Charlton. And he was an All-American Heisman winner when he was at Auburn.
Let me give you another great player, a running back also that played in the SEC, the great Herschel Walker. He was just as good, I think, as Bo, but not as marketed as much as Bo. Big, so your thoughts?
Well, you know, you got to be boisterous when you're going to be marketable, Charlton. When you think about what Herschel Walker did as a freshman at the University of Georgia, catapulting that team to a national championship, Charlton, leaving college after just 3 years with 1,500 yards rushing.
Yeah.
In the NFL and in the USFL, Charlton, he amassed over 14,000 yards rushing during his career. Should be in Canton someday soon.
Someday soon. As fast as he runs, I'm sure he'll be there very soon. Here's a man that when I first saw George Foreman, it was at a boxing ring at a gym in Hayward, California in the Bay Area. And my brothers and I were there, and he asked my older brother to come and get into the ring and box with him. But my brother was 12 years old at the time, and he said, no, I'm not getting in the ring. We still teased him about that. Give me your thoughts on George Foreman. Not only that, my son must use his grill like every day, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, you know, you think about George Foreman. I mean, he was a part of that 1968 Olympics class, Charlton, where he won the heavyweight title. But he catapulted that on to success in the professional ring, Charlton, where everyone remembers the memorable knockout that he had against Joe Frazier, and then losing his title in Zaire to Ali, Charlton. But George Foreman has now become a spokesman as he's grown in life, Charlton, and he's become a larger-than-life figure in the black community.
Definitely a man that's known all over the world. They talk about the king, and who is the king, really? I would love to see men who are considered the king, when you get the chance to get in front of a microphone, encourage the world, especially young black boys. Google Carter G. Woodson. Just Google it. I know we talk about the king. It's always intellect versus instinct. And a lot of times as black boys and black men and women, we get praised for our instinct. Is he a good athlete? Is he big, strong, and fast? How high can he jump? In fact, we have NBA and NFL teams. They want to measure how long is his wingspan. But people don't ask about your intellect. LeBron James is a corporation. Remember, a corporation is a person. He's bigger than he is as an athlete. Big C, your thoughts?
The king is what the king is, Charlton. He was an anointed one coming out of high school. He's delivered in the NBA multiple titles with different organizations. He has moved the needle as far as a social activist and an athlete. And even the king of the NFL. You know, I know he met with POTUS at the White House. And, you know, there's a book called, I believe it's called A Team of Rivals. And you got to, at times, meet with people that you don't agree with. And I know he took a lot of flack from meeting with POTUS, especially knowing what POTUS did with the Central Park Five, what POTUS did with housing discrimination, and some of the things that he said to the senators about leaving out of the country and go back to where you came from. But Jim Brown, arguably at his day, the best football player ever,
but he also wanted to make movies. I mean, it took Raquel Welch to get him out of football. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, when you think about Jim Brown, he was the greatest player in the NFL during his era, Charlton. He wasn't a superstar in college at Syracuse. He was a better lacrosse player. That's where he was an All-American.
Yeah.
But once he got on the playing field in the NFL, Charlton, he was a horse. He led the NFL in rushing 8 of the 9 years that he played there.
Yeah, amazing, and he's done a lot as a social activist. You don't always have to agree with people. That's a problem in our society. If you don't agree with someone, we act like you can't talk to them anymore. And that's so foolish. Life is a gift. You got to open it. And sometimes you shake hands with people you disagree with. Satchel Paige. Talk about a great person who grew up in Jim Crow and had all the things that society had pushed against him. But in God's eyes, he was one of the best in the universe. Big C, your thoughts on Satchel Paige?
Well, Charlton, this was a man that was almost had to wait forever to get his opportunity to play in major leagues. 42 years old as a rookie with the Cleveland Indians, Charlton, before he finally got his shot. But he also used that opportunity to win a World Series that year with the Cleveland Indians.
Yeah.
Satchel Paige is probably the greatest pitcher ever to play Major League Baseball, Charlton. He just did not get the opportunity to play the game at an early age.
And it wasn't by his own doing. It's that thing that Carter G. Woodson talked about, the miseducation of the Negro. Well, who did the miseducating? That was mainstream. We're asking for everyone to atone. Like the late Billy Graham and the late Dr. Martin Luther King. We can atone. We can all get along in Big C. We just got to talk to each other. Give me your thoughts on the great movie that I saw, Brian's Song, and Gale Sears. And Gale Sears, one of the best running backs out of Kansas ever. But he made success not only as an athlete, but in the movies. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, the Kansas Comet is what Gale Sears was known on. His career was cut short, by a tackle from Kermit Alexander from the San Francisco 49ers. Back in that day, Charlton, knee surgery wasn't what it is today because Adrian Peterson had the same knee injury that Gale Sears had, Charlton. But in his 7 years in the NFL, he was lightning in a bottle and something that no one had ever seen before on the professional surface.
Speaking of something that no one's ever seen before, and again, Carter G. Woodson, Miseducation of the Negro. You got to read that. We all got to. I know we want to see how much money somebody's going to sign for. We want to see if someone's going to be bigger, stronger, and faster. But it's so important to realize what's in that man, not how big, strong, and fast he is. Magic Johnson, one of the most successful, most ridiculed men in sports by mainstream media. But give me a Caucasian man that's become one of the best basketball players in the universe. Also played every position in a playoff game, and also went on to become a broadcaster, went on to become a coach, a GM, owns a business, part of an owner of the LA Dodgers and the Lakers, and faces such criticism from people who can't even carry his water, Big C. Your thoughts on the great Magic Johnson?
Well, Magic Johnson turned 60 years old today, a great milestone for any African-American man. But his legacy on the sports arena, it will never go untarnished, Charlton. When you think about him as an NCAA champion, as an NBA champion, as a manager, as a coach, as an owner, as a business entrepreneur, Magic Johnson has been a beacon in the African-American community.
Well, I'm just proud of what people do when they put everything they have into it. Walter Payton, we know him as Sweetness, one of the best running backs in the history of the NFL. What does he mean to this list of people, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, when you talk about a guy with work ethic and a heart of stone, Charlton, that was Walter Payton. Out of Jackson State, a Division II, historical black college.
Right.
Number 1 draft pick of Chicago Bears. Didn't even start right off as a rookie. He was a backup running back. But he went on to become the all-time leading rushing champ at the end of his career with the Chicago Bears. Charlton spent his entire career with one franchise. Got that franchise's only Super Bowl win also, Charlton. But Sweetness, when you talk about a man of integrity, they even have an award for players now in the NFL called the Walter Payton Award.
Walter Payton Award. I remember down at the Bellagio in Las Vegas a couple of years ago, I saw this tall, skinny guy. And people were saying, that's Dr. J. That's Dr. J. Give me your thoughts on the great Dr. J and what he's meant on and off the court, Big C. Your thoughts?
Julius, revolutionized the dunk game in pro basketball, Charlton, coming out of the University of Massachusetts, starting off in the NBA, in the ABA, Charlton, with the Virginia Squires on to the New York Nets, prior to getting to the Philadelphia 76ers, where he won an NBA title. but he was a human highlight reel, Charlton, of his day.
Yeah, amazing athlete, Big C. Ken Griffey Jr., I know his dad also played in the game of baseball. Big C, your thoughts?
You know, Charlton, he became the first father and son tandem to hit a home run in the same game in the major leagues when they played with the Seattle Mariners, but his career was cut short by multiple injuries. If Ken Griffey Jr. had not had all those injuries that he had as a major league player, Charlton, this young man had the capability to hit 700 home runs.
Big C, our list is so long, but I really want to get him in today. I want to ask you your thoughts on the great Ernie Banks and what he means to the world of sports. Big C, your thoughts?
Ernie Banks, you know, Ernie Banks was a great baseball player with the Chicago Cubs, Charlton, a Hall of Famer. He was there in that iconic time when the lovable Cubs, Charlton,
that's right,
just couldn't get over the hump.
Couldn't get over the hump. Carl Lewis, I know as a speedster, a guy that hated Ben Johnson, but Carl Lewis may be one of the most famous athletes, but not as popular as his sister. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, when you think about Carl Lewis, Charlton, a 9-time Olympic gold medalist, one of the greatest sprinters that this country has ever seen. He took the Olympic Games to new heights. He was must-see television every 4 years at the Olympics.
I remember how dominant he was. And then you think about other great players. Roberto Clemente, a little bit old school, Big C, but still a great person, a great legacy. Big C, your thoughts?
You know, you talk about an ambassador and a humanitarian. Roberto Clemente lost his life, Charlton, on a humanitarian aid mission down to South America after an earthquake, and his plane crashed in the ocean. But, you know, this was a man, he was the spiritual and emotional leader of the Pittsburgh Pirates, had over 3,000 hits as a player. His career wasn't over. His life was just cut short.
Yeah, and life is a gift. You got to open it. If you got a grudge against somebody, let it go, especially if you believe in doing good things for people. We talk about Carter G. Woodson, that we're supposed to be intelligent. When you think about instinct versus intellect, a lot of African-American boys and girls are raised to encourage their instinctive side. Get in the weight room and lift weights for 6 hours a day. Go run 5 miles, do 100 push-ups a day. Shoot 1,000 jump shots. But there's something called the mind that controls all of that. I think a player that epitomizes intellect versus instinct is the great Steph Curry, as one of the greatest 2-point or 3-point shooters in the history of basketball, the only unanimous MVP, but he also is very marketable outside of the court. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, he has changed the way that young people look at basketball now. We talk about the great Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. We talked about the great Wilt Chamberlain. He's revolutionized the three-point shot, Charlton. He told that the smaller player can go out and do that.
Yep.
Now even the big players want to do that. He has changed the face of how the NBA is played today.
I want to finish in several more. I want to get them in. Joe Frazier. Down goes Frazier, but he was more big. I guess he had a bigger heart than he was in the ring, even though he knocked out nearly everybody he fought. But he had the problem he couldn't get over the hump all the time against Ali, and then it was Foreman that caused him problems. But he was a bigger man in presence than he was in stature. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, you think about Joe Frazier, and you talk about all great heavyweights of all time. Joe Frazier only lost to 2 heavyweights during his professional career. That was George Foreman and Muhammad Ali. So when you think about a fighter that spends his entire professional career and has been the heavyweight champion of the world, and you only lost to 2 former heavyweight champions, Charlton, that speaks about greatness within itself.
I would say it does, Big C. Obviously, a man is as big as his heart, and he had a big heart. I want to get your thoughts on we talk about intellect versus instinct, and guys that can do things after the days of playing are over. I think about Derek Jeter, Big C. What does Derek Jeter mean to the sports universe, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, you know, Derek Jeter was Mr. Yankee. You know, everybody talked about Cal Ripken's record with the Baltimore Orioles. Derek Jeter equaled that record with the New York Yankees, Charlton. He was the captain, won multiple World Series. He was a phenomenal player, Charlton, at shortstop. He was an everyday player, but he was a leader on and off the field, Charlton.
Very much so. Earl Campbell, that guy had thighs. I don't know if his thigh pads were as big because his thighs were that big, or were they just extra padded to make people afraid of him, Big C? Your thoughts on the great Earl Campbell?
Well, when Earl showed up, everybody knew you were going to have a bad day on defense.
Yeah.
I mean, when you talk about a diesel running through something, Charlton, that was Earl Campbell from the University of Texas, where he won the Heisman Trophy to his career with the Houston Oilers.
Yeah.
Where, he just ran over everybody and everything that he saw.
I remember Jack Tatum and Earl Campbell, they collided down in the Astrodome in Houston. Do you recall that? I still can't remember who won that battle, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, neither one of them won that battle. Both of those players ended up that play with a concussion. If you ever go back and watch the replay of it, Jack couldn't wrap him up. Earl ended up rolling into the end zone, getting the touchdown, but neither one of them got off the ground real swiftly.
Well, a player that got off the ground when it comes to swinging his bat was the great Reggie Jackson. I told you, as a West Coast boy, I watched Reggie Jackson when he played for the A's and also when he played for the Yankees. And I still measure guys to Reggie Jackson and Barry Bonds. I think I've seen the best hitters in baseball on the West Coast. Give me your thoughts on Reggie Jackson, Big C, your thoughts.
Well, when you think about Reggie Jackson, I mean, he was a guy that got a nickname called Mr. October.
Yep.
Because when that month rolled around, Charlton, he performed, whether he was with the Oakland A's or the New York Yankees. He hit 3 home runs in a game against the Los Angeles Dodgers, which got him that nickname, Mr. October.
Mr. October. And another player that could be starting out at Mr. October, because that's when Basketball Reports, the great Tim Duncan. Give me your thoughts on Tim Duncan and what he means as a big guy in the NBA universe. Big C, your thoughts.
Well, Charlton, Tim Duncan is probably the last of the great big men to play in the NBA. Retired just a couple of years ago. He just joined the San Antonio staff as an assistant coach. But, he personified what teamwork was as an NBA player. He was unselfish. He restructured his contract every year. He was about being a team player and winning, and he delivered that to those great fans in San Antonio.
Amazing. Florence Griffith Joyner, I remember the 84 Olympics down in L.A. She had the fingernails. She had the Miss America look, but she was the fastest woman in the universe. Your thought on FloJo, Big C, your thoughts?
FloJo was just a tremendous athlete, Charles. Unfortunately, she passed away a couple decades ago of heart problems. But, she was a phenomenal athlete. When you think about her burst out of the block there in that 84 Olympics, where she ran a 9.700 as a female. Just a phenomenal athlete and a woman of character and grace, Charles.
Yeah, beautiful, phenomenal, just an amazing African-American athlete, Big C. Pele, when you think about kicking the soccer ball around and how soccer, the World Cup, is thinking about expanding and more countries are getting involved, Pele is synonymous with soccer, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, when you think about soccer's expansion into the U.S., it was brought along by the great Pele when he played with the New York Cosmos. Soccer was nothing. He brought television cameras back into the soccer arena, and we see the explosion of soccer in America since that, from the youth level all the way up to the professional MLS teams that they have now in the United States, Charlton. Pele was the godfather of that.
Amazing on the turf, Big C. And then Wilma Rudolph, I know there's so many athletes that they want to be something great. I just want to bring up her name again. Your thoughts, Big C?
Well, Wilma Rudolph, like I said, Charlton, was a tremendous sprinter. You think about what she had to overcome as a youth.
Yeah.
But she didn't let that hold her back, Charlton. She had a great family backing, and she exploited that to heights of Olympic titles, Charlton.
Another man, when he had custom model in his life, Mike Tyson, when he came onto the scene, he reminded people of what Joe Frazier already was. Big C, your thoughts on the Iron Mike?
He was just a bigger version and younger version of a Joe Frazier, Charlton. He was fearless.
Yep.
But he struck fear in all of his opponents. What we saw in Mike Tyson in his heyday, Charlton, there was nothing ever like that you could walk into a ring and the only sweat you broke was the one that you warmed up, because Mike Tyson would put you to sleep.
He would put you to sleep. I want to finish up in a little bit more talking about some of the greatness. The list is so hard to come up with. There's so many measurables, so many great African-American athletes in America. And I just want to cover at least 5 more, Big C. The great Sugar Ray Leonard. I know both of you were going to have the same seat. You ever go to the movie and somebody has the same seat? And how does that conversation come apart? Who ended up sitting in the seat, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, I eventually got my seat. I outside Sugar on that event and everything, Charlton.
Yeah.
But you talk about a guy from Olympic glory, Charlton, to marketing guru. That was Sugar Ray Leonard. He was the first professional fighter, Charlton, to earn $100 million in the ring.
Wow.
And so you think about the the paydays that he's created for everybody who's come after him.
The first time I saw the great Karl Malone, he was at Louisiana Tech, and I saw him in the March Madness. He was either NIT or March Madness, and I said, who in the world is this guy? Why is he not at LSU, Big C? Your thoughts on the great Karl Malone?
Karl Malone is one of those great NBA players that were overlooked. He spent 20 years in the league. Charlton never won a title. But when he left the league, he was the league's all-time lead, number 2 all-time leading scorer. Just a tremendous teammate in Utah.
Well, we're in baseball season. I want to give 3 more and paying homage. And I know Curt Flood, obviously, when we think about Curt Flood, he's the reason, a lot like Jesse Owens, and a lot like Carter G. Woodson, that a lot of men became wealthy because he challenged and sued the league over free agency. Not a lot of guys make a lot of money. And I want to just pay homage to Curt Flood. And our final 3, I'm going to get your thoughts on the great Frank Robinson. Big C, your thoughts.
Frank Robinson, we lost Frank earlier this year. Charlton was a tremendous baseball player. He was an all-around athlete in high school in California there in the Bay Area. Actually was a high school teammate of the great Bill Russell.
Yeah.
That's how great an athlete he was. He was also, Charlton, the first baseball player to win the MVP in the American League and the National League. And he was an African-American to be the first to accomplish that feat.
Yeah.
Ended up in the Hall of Fame. Not only that, Charlton, he became one of the first African-American managers in Major League Baseball.
Wow, amazing, man. Big C, Rickey Henderson. I know they call the A's baseball stadium the Coliseum now. They call it Rickey Henderson Field. And I remember seeing this guy that he could bat, he could steal bases. He made the pitchers nervous in the batter's box and when he got on base. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Rickey Henderson always spoke in the third person, but when you talked about a guy getting on base and automatically getting the second, that was Rickey Henderson. He broke Lou Brock's all-time base-stealing record, which no one ever thought would be broken, but we've seen many records fall in Major League Baseball. But Rickey was a homegrown product that went on to prominence with the A's and the Yankees.
In honor of my father, I'm going to say Willie Mays, a Northern California kid. You think about what he's meant to baseball, what he means to the Giants, and I believe when you think about the Say Hey Kid, everybody still references this man, but he also did his thing in Jim Crow. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, he's always been known for that great over-the-shoulder catch in Ebbets Field during the World Series, Charlton, to help propel the Giants to a World Series title when they were in New York. And he moved north to the West Coast with that organization, Charlton, when they made the move to San Francisco.
Yeah.
But he has been the ambassador for the Giants ever since his playing days and even in his retirement, Charlton. He's been a part of that organization. He's been a part of that community. And he's one of the most renowned figures in the Bay Area.
Yeah, well, I just appreciate so much what we talk about. I want to just say before we close out on tonight's baseball schedule, I just want to let people know, we talk about the building the wall and how we want to keep people from coming to America, the land of the free and the home of the brave. I remember standing on the Statue of Liberty. It's a beautiful landmark for this country. And it talks about give us your tired, give us your poor, and everybody's welcome here. And I don't want to see this country turn into what it used to be in the past. How do you make America great again? You make things greater by going forward. And so many of our great athletes, they've been trained to be instinctual, but they were actually intellectual. I want to just encourage people to Google Carter G. Woodson, the miseducation of the Negro, especially some of our sports brethren that don't even pay homage to those great men that made it possible for us to do what we're doing. You can follow Big C Sports 24 hours a day, 7 days a week on the #1 podcast network in the universe on iHeartRadio Podcast. You can follow Big C Sports on Apple Podcast. You can follow Big C Sports on Google Podcast. You can follow Big C Sports on Spreaker. You can follow Big C Sports on YouTube. If you have a TV in your home, and most people do, you can follow Big C Sports on Xfinity Comcast. What I really love is the app called Alexa. You can say, Alexa, play Big C Sports Podcast. You'll hear from our sponsors. You'll hear welcome to the show. I'll introduce Big C as the Mystic, and he'll do his thing. And so I really appreciate them for all of their support. Big C, tonight, I just want to quickly run down Major League Baseball schedule. We have Seattle at Detroit, LA Dodgers at Miami. We have Cleveland at the New York, and that's the New York Yankees. Chicago at Philadelphia. St. Louis at Cincinnati. We have the New York Mets at Atlanta. Minnesota at Texas. And San Francisco at Arizona. Chicago White Sox at the Los Angeles Angels, and Houston's at Oakland. So I really appreciate everything going on in the sports universe. 90,000 black girls missing. No one talks about it. If they were white, I wonder if it would be all over the news. I just encourage everybody to Google everything we say so that you can see if we're credible or not. Big C, back in the day, there was a man by the name of Drew Boudini Brown. He was known as Muhammad Ali's right-hand man, and he would always tell Ali, with all you got to use, how can you lose? Rumble, young men, rumble. Big C, what are you looking forward to in the sports universe?
Well, Charlie, on this date back in 1993, shortly after being inducted into Cooperstown Major League Baseball's Hall of Fame, the New York Yankees retired the number 44 of the great Reggie Jackson into their circle of honor at Yankee Stadium.
Wow, and he deserves it. And I just encourage everybody to Google Carter G. Woodson, and make sure you tell your kids about it before they start doing push-ups and sit-ups and all the stuff that mainstream tells them to do. Every Monday through Friday at 5 and 6 p.m. worldwide. Follow Big C Sports on the Big C Sports Network, on the #1 network in the United States of America. And Big C Sports has been voted the #1 sports show in the universe, according to Big C and them good old boys down south. As we always tell you, that's never, ever an excuse for domestic violence. If you know any man or woman going through that garbage, please pick up the phone and call 911, because no man or woman should ever have to go through that garbage all on their own. And as we always tell you on every Big C Sports show, we thank you, we appreciate you, and we hope that you have a super fantastic day.